The lobby fell into an uneasy stillness as two uniformed security guards flanked an older man, quietly escorting him toward the exit. His blazer sagged with deep-set wrinkles, shoes scuffed from years of wear. He made no protest, no grand gestures, no defiance, just steady steps and a tired dignity. Behind the sleek front desk stood Webb, the young branch manager, his posture rigid with authority. "Sir, this is a professional institution," he announced, voice cutting through the hush like glass. "We don't permit unsolicited visits that disrupt operations." The man glanced around, his eyes slow and thoughtful. Not a single person intervened. No one asked why. Their silence spoke volumes. He reached into his jacket, prompting both guards to stiffen, hands twitching. But all he retrieved was an old cell phone. With a composed motion, he pressed a single button and spoke in a calm, measured tone. "Code 7, Central Branch. Notify the full board." He ended the call without further word. No explanation, no frustration. Just silence. 3 minutes later, every executive in the city would rise from their seats, preparing to meet the man they'd just dismissed. But earlier, just 30 minutes before, he had stepped into the very same lobby unnoticed. No security detail, no assistant, no grand entrance, just him, alone. He moved slowly, scanning the space, not like a visitor, but like someone walking through echoes of a life once lived. Behind the counter, a woman named Chen looked up and offered a courteous smile. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" "No," he replied gently. "But I'd like to speak with someone regarding a high-level account." Chen hesitated. His voice carried calm confidence, but his appearance suggested otherwise. Simple clothes, a watch with a scratched face, no visible signs of importance. Before she could respond, a younger woman standing nearby interjected with impatience. "He probably just needs help with retirement paperwork. I'm here to finalize my mortgage." Chen glanced between the two. A flicker of conflict crossed her face before she nodded politely. "Go ahead," she told the woman, then turned back to the man. "I'll have someone assist you shortly, sir." The older man offered a faint smile and stepped aside. He settled into a chair beneath a wall poster, an old corporate portrait now mostly obscured by a promotional flyer. Beneath that ad, part of his own face lay hidden. He didn't pull out his phone, didn't pace or sigh, just sat there, hands folded neatly in his lap, quietly waiting. Across the room, life moved as usual. Numbers were called, a teller laughed, 2 interns passed whispering something about Grandpa on a mission. Chen stole a glance at him once, maybe twice, but didn't approach. On the wall behind him, a sliver of his portrait peeked out from behind the taped flyer. A face forgotten. Or buried. The clock ticked onward. He looked at it once, then again at his own watch, humble, aged, yet well-kept. His expression betrayed no anger. If anything, it was expectation, like he had seen this before, like this outcome had always been inevitable. Webb emerged from the hallway, tugging at his tie, his eyes locked on the older man, still waiting. No clipboard, no tablet, just presence. "Sir," Webb said, already irritated, "has someone already helped you?" "No," the man replied evenly. "I'm still waiting to speak with someone about a senior-level account." Webb frowned. His tone sharpened. "I'll need more than that." The man nodded. "Of course," but offered no further detail. The pause between them grew heavy. Webb sighed, his patience thinning. "I'll ask again. What exactly are you here for?" "I'd prefer to speak with someone who has system-level access," the man replied. There was no aggression in his voice, just calm, clear direction. Webb's eyes narrowed. "System-level? This isn't a walk-in clinic for old brokerage issues." His voice rose just enough to draw curious stares. One customer started filming. The old man didn't react. No flinch, no retreat. He reached into his coat once more. Slow, deliberate. Webb tensed. But again, it was only his watch. He checked the time, then returned his hand to his lap. Webb stepped closer, voice lowered but steely. "This isn't the place for games. If you won't explain, I'll have to ask you to leave." The man looked up at him, calm, centered. "I'm not here to make trouble," he said quietly. "Just a conversation." From behind her desk, Chen watched the scene unfold, her eyes flicking to her terminal. Hesitating, she tapped her keyboard. One result appeared. Jackson H. Level 0 override. Restricted account. Her breath caught. That title, Founder. Full override access. It wasn't a mistake. Across the room, the man stood up, lifted his phone once more, pressed a button, code 7, Central Branch, notify the full board. Chen stared at her screen, hands frozen. The name still blinked, Jackson H. Active Protocol, code 7. Webb turned, trying to maintain control. "What was that call?" he asked, voice strained. Jackson said nothing. He tucked the phone into his coat, adjusted his cuffs, and brushed a whisper of dust from his sleeve, as though nothing important had just occurred. "You think you can call someone and skip protocol?" Webb barked, louder now. "Security! Remove this man!" The guards exchanged uncertain glances. One stepped forward, but the other held back. Phones were up. The air thickened with quiet tension. Chen leaned toward the nearest guard. "There's something you need to know," she began, but Webb cut her off sharply. "No need," he snapped. "No clearance, no appointment, just noise." The air had shifted. What began as quiet discomfort had now ripened into full-blown tension. Phones were raised like witnesses, their cameras unblinking, recording every detail. "And Jackson?" He simply glanced at his watch again. Calmly, methodically, 90 seconds remained. Behind the counter, Webb paced. His movements had grown more erratic. He seized the office landline, jabbing buttons with barely concealed frustration. "Yeah, get me corporate security," he snapped. "Now! Check if there are any scheduled VIPs for today." His voice carried a mix of command and desperation. "He won't give his name. Says he has override authority. Complete nonsense." Across the room, Sarah's live stream surged past 6,000 viewers. Comments exploded, some in disbelief, others angry, but a few started recognizing the name. Jackson Harper. A name with weight, a legacy, a mystery to some, a legend to others. Chen, meanwhile, opened a second tab in near silence. Her hands moved on instinct, typing fast but softly. She scanned the leadership directory until her eyes landed on it, midway down the screen. Jackson Harper, founder, executive chairman, full board authority. She froze. Her fingers trembled. Her breath caught in her throat, but she didn't speak. Didn't move. Webb slammed the phone down. "No record, no clearance," he announced triumphantly. "Just a stubborn old man playing games." But Jackson didn't respond. He simply stepped forward. His turn had come. No fuss, no rush. Webb didn't even look up. "Next," he said, fingers still dancing on the keyboard. Jackson waited. Finally, Webb glanced up and frowned. "You again?" He stared Jackson down, annoyance flaring. "You people never take the hint." Rodriguez, one of the security guards, shifted his weight. His eyes darted between Webb and Jackson. The crowd fell silent again, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Jackson reached into his coat and calmly extended an ID. But Webb didn't touch it. Instead, he leaned back and declared loudly, "This isn't a place for people like you." Gasps rippled through the room. Another phone went up. Sarah's stream hit 8,000. Chen's terminal blinked with a soft tone. An alert. Restricted override access. The screen lit up in red. She stared at the name again. Her chest tightened. She looked across the room, just as Jackson lowered his ID and stood still, hands at his sides. Outside, city traffic moved in rhythm. Buses hissed, horns hummed. But inside, everything slowed, every breath, every beat. It was like the air itself had thickened. Webb, finally realizing how many phones were pointed at him, lowered his voice. "He's stalling," he muttered. "For what? Backup?" Jen didn't answer. Her screen still displayed the blinking line. Code 7 active. Notify all executive branches. Rodriguez stepped beside her. He read it. His jaw tightened. And then he did something subtle, but telling. He stepped away from Webb. Sarah's viewership climbed again, 12,000 now. The comments flew too fast to follow. Then, right on cue, exactly 60 seconds later, the lobby doors parted with a hiss. A man in a tailored suit rushed in, breathing hard, tie askew. His eyes swept the room and landed squarely on Jackson. He stopped, stunned. "Sir?" His voice cracked, then softened. "Mr. Harper? I wasn't told you'd be on site today." Webb spun around. "Who is this?" he demanded. The man turned toward Webb. "Morrison, Regional Vice President." He extended a hand toward Jackson. "Mr. Harper, my sincerest apologies. We had no notification, no alert in the system." Webb blinked. The name meant nothing at first. But then Chen whispered, just loud enough to pierce the tension. "Jackson Harper." Webb's face paled. Morrison nodded solemnly. "Our founder, our majority shareholder, the man who built this institution." The ground beneath Webb seemed to shift. His swagger drained. Confidence melted into confusion. He stepped back from the counter as Jackson adjusted his cuff calmly, still not triumphant, just steady. Morrison turned to him again. "The board is upstairs, in session. May I escort you?" Jackson nodded once. He didn't acknowledge Webb, didn't even glance his way. He walked forward toward the elevators, silent but resolute. Webb suddenly lunged forward. "Wait, sir. I didn't know. If I had known who you were." Jackson turned halfway. His eyes didn't burn with fury, just sadness. "But that's the point, isn't it?" he said quietly. "You didn't ask." Rodriguez exhaled. Chen looked at the floor. Sarah's live stream peaked at 17,000. A comment flashed on screen. He just ended that man's entire career with one sentence. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Jackson entered, Morrison by his side. Chen hesitated, then saw Jackson glance her way. Not a nod, not a smile, just an opening, a space to choose. She stepped in. Webb lingered, then followed, head bowed. No one acknowledged him. The doors closed. Inside, silence. The numbers on the panel ticked upward. 37, 42, 44. The silence grew heavier with each floor. Chen clutched her tablet, hands slick with sweat. Webb stood still, murmuring to himself, "We can control the story. He won't risk noise." But Morrison looked away. Rodriguez had stayed behind. Chen turned to Jackson. He didn't speak, just watched. Present, steady. Something in his stare asked, "Who are you standing with?" She looked down, then stepped closer to him. Webb noticed. His jaw twitched. The elevator slowed. Floor 47. The doors opened onto a long glass hallway, frosted panels at the end, silver handles, the boardroom. Chen hesitated again, eyes flicking down to her screen. Still glowing. Restricted override, Jackson Harper. Not just a name, a statement. Webb walked ahead, still posturing, still pretending. Morrison stood by the boardroom door. "They're all inside," he said quietly. Chan stepped forward, catching Jackson's gaze. For a flicker of a second, they locked eyes. He didn't smile, but she knew he'd seen her choice. The boardroom fell silent as Jackson entered. 12 members looked up. None expected him. He placed a small tablet on the table. No notes, no folders, just that. "I won't take much of your time," he began, voice firm but controlled. "But what happened downstairs reflects on all of us." A few glances exchanged. Sterling leaned forward. "What exactly happened?" Jackson tapped the tablet. A live stream flickered to life. Thera's footage. The moment Webb said, "This isn't a place for people like you." Silence. Chin looked down. Morrison stayed still. Webb paled, saying nothing. The two stepped back from Rual. "This was recorded less than an hour ago," Jackson continued. "It's now viral on 3 platforms, and it's just getting started." He turned off the stream. "I'm not here to assign blame," he said, scanning the room. "I'm here to demand change." Someone cleared their throat. "If this is an isolated—" "It's not," Jackson interrupted. "It's a pattern. This time it was filmed." Sterling sat back slowly. Jackson pressed on. "I founded this bank to serve everyone with dignity, not judge them by how polished their shoes are." Webb sat, frozen, his hands trembling. "This lobby, this boardroom, every floor in between must reflect one standard: dignity." A heavy pause. "Starting today, that standard is enforced." He tapped the tablet again. A list appeared. Immediate action proposals. Mandatory bias training for all frontline staff. Monthly customer interaction audits with anonymous reporting. Management evaluation tied to equity, not just performance. Accountability. A younger board member spoke up. "What about today?" Jackson turned to Webb. "That's the 4th step." Sterling turned. "Mr. Webb, would you like to explain your actions?" Webb stared at the table, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know who he was." "That's not the problem," Jackson said, his voice steady but sharp as glass. "The problem is that you thought you did, and no one disagreed." Webb's shoulders sank. His hands fidgeted. "I misjudged him," he said, more to himself than to the room. "I assumed he didn't belong." His voice was frail, like it had aged 10 years in a moment, a confession dressed as an excuse. No one replied. Sterling looked down at his notes without reading them. Gonzalez crossed her arms, unreadable. Chen didn't even glance in Webb's direction anymore. The space around him had turned cold, isolating. Jackson didn't move, but his words sliced deeper. "You didn't misjudge him," he said. "You judged him too quickly. That's the failure." Webb looked up, scanning the room for some flicker of sympathy, but there was none. Only silence that grew heavier with each second. One board member finally broke it. "We can't afford leadership that acts on instinct and hides behind policy." Webb's jaw tensed. "I followed protocol." Jackson's response came quiet, but lethal. "You followed assumption. That's what you defended, not policy." The room froze. Not even a whisper. He said. Webb looked smaller than ever, like a man who suddenly realized he'd been arguing from the wrong side of history all along. The vote was swift. One by one, hands were raised. No hesitation, no debate, unanimous. Reform would begin immediately. Jackson nodded once and turned back to Webb. His tone carried no cruelty, only clarity. "You have 2 options," he said. Webb blinked, not sure he'd heard right. Option 1. Resign now, standard severance applies. Option 2. Termination for cause, no benefits. Still no anger, just policy, clean, precise. Webb stared at the table. For the first time in hours, his voice barely carried. Or resign. Jackson turned to Chen. You'll stay. Probationary review, bias training. Final evaluation in 3 months. Chen nodded. Understood. Her voice was quiet but unwavering. Sterling cleared his throat. Jackson, what else do you need from us? Jackson scanned the boardroom. Transparency, public acknowledgement, and a timeline for execution. You'll have it in writing today, Sterling said without pause. Jackson collected his tablet with slow precision. The meeting was done, but the mission had only begun. Chen lingered, unsure if she should say anything. Jackson offered a small nod. That was enough. Webb remained seated, eyes glazed, staring at the far wall. Sterling stood. Jackson, you turned a crisis into a compass. We'll follow through. Jackson nodded once. This isn't for me. It's for the people who walk through our doors every single day. As the others filed out, Morrison paused beside Jackson. I should have known, he said softly. I should have been there. Jackson's response was quiet but unyielding. Then make sure the next person doesn't have to prove they belong. Morrison nodded. No promises, just understanding. Outside, the hallway basked in morning light. The world moved on, unaware that something had shifted above. Jackson stood near the elevator, briefcase in hand. Chen stood beside him, silent, alert, changed. Behind them, the boardroom door closed on one chapter. Another had already begun. Morrison checked his phone. Press inquiries are piling up. We're trending. Nationally. Jackson didn't flinch. How soon can we brief PR? Within the hour. I'll write the statement myself. Make sure it leads with ownership, Jackson said. No excuses. No soft language. Chen looked up. Will we tell staff internally? Jackson nodded. Every branch, every employee. They'll hear it from us before they read it online. The elevator arrived. As Jackson stepped in, he turned slightly. Let's fix this for good. The ride down was silent. Chen watched her reflection flicker in the brushed metal doors. It trembled, but she stood firm. Then she asked, why didn't you say who you were? Jackson didn't look at her. If dignity depends on identity, it isn't dignity. Chen swallowed. I almost sided with Webb. Not because I believed him, but because it felt safer. Jackson didn't condemn her. He asked simply, what stopped you? You did, she said, the way you stood still, like you already knew how it would unfold. She took a breath. I want to fix what I almost allowed. Jackson gave a slight nod. No praise, no pity, just recognition. As the doors opened to the lobby, the room was quieter, less buzzing, fewer phones, but the tension still hummed in the corners. Rodriguez stood at the entrance. He gave Jackson a nod, respectful, honest. Thank you, Jackson said, for not escalating earlier. Rodriguez shrugged. Didn't feel right. Sometimes you just know. Trust that instinct, Jackson said. Train others to hear it. Exercise. Chen followed Jackson through the lobby, confident now, steady. Behind them, the glass doors whispered shut. One customer leaned to another and whispered, wasn't that the guy they kicked out? No, the other replied. That's the man who owns the place. 6 weeks later, the same marble lobby shone with a different light. Posters lined the walls. Respect is not optional. Bias has no home here. Rodriguez now wore a new badge. Lead security trainer. He greeted visitors with calm certainty. Chen stood behind the front desk, confident, not cautious. She managed new staff schedules with sure hands. Webb's old seat now belonged to Maria Gonzalez. 15 years of frontline experience, zero tolerance for assumptions. Digital monitors looped a simple message. Everyone deserves dignity, always. When a customer hesitated near the entrance, a young employee walked over. "Can I help you, sir?" No assumptions, just service. Chen watched from afar and smiled. Change wasn't loud, but it was happening. Behind the scenes, numbers shifted, complaints dropped, satisfaction rose. A new system flagged potential bias in real time. When a teller asked a Vietnamese customer to speak more clearly, though his English was fine, Chen reviewed the footage. Tone, posture, language. She approached the teller calmly. "We speak to listen, not to judge." The teller nodded, embarrassed but willing to grow. Later that day, the same customer returned. He was greeted with warmth and a glass of water. Rodriguez saw it, said nothing, just smiled. Bias wasn't always loud, but now neither was accountability, and that made all the difference. The Amelia Protocol, once policy, was now a practice, visible, daily, real. Training sessions filled conference rooms, no role play, real stories. Rodriguez told one group, "I've seen bias destroy trust. This system gives us a chance to stop it early." Chen led the next session. No script, just truth. How close I came to staying silent. How one moment changed everything. The room listened. No phones, just hearts. Tuned. New hires signed not contracts but commitments. They started cutting commitments. To pause before judging, to ask before assuming, to speak with purpose. The bank wasn't perfect, but it was prepared. When Jackson returned weeks later, no one announced it. But the moment he entered, every staff member stood, not from protocol, but instinct. Respect without prompting. Gonzalez met him first. "We're doing better now." Jackson smiled. "Better's not the finish line, but it's the right direction." Chen stepped forward. "This team, they don't ask who someone is to treat them right." Rodriguez nodded. "Still work to do, but we're watching, together." Jackson nodded once. The message had landed. He turned. No speech, no fanfare. Just a man who trusted change could last. At an industry conference, cameras flashed, but Jackson sat in the second row, not on stage. Instead, Chen stood behind the podium. "I was part of the problem once," she said. "I didn't speak when it mattered. But silence doesn't define you. What you do next does." She didn't preach. She didn't perform. She shared. About fear, about instinct, about change. Her final words rang clear. "Respect is a decision, not a reaction." Applause rose, not loud, but lasting. Jackson didn't rise, didn't wave. It just watched. Because sometimes the best leaders aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who nearly did and chose another path. A still image from that day would become iconic. Webb, frozen in disbelief. Next to it, Jackson's voice in a caption. "Respect shouldn't depend on recognition." That moment became part of the new employee curriculum, not to shame, but to remember. Rodriguez once told a new guard, "You'll never know who someone is. So treat everyone like they matter. Because they do." And slowly it stopped being just policy. It became culture. Not a slogan, not a campaign. Just the way things were. A place where no one had to earn respect. Only receive it from the start. Gonzalez reviewed the morning reports, scrolling through a system alert flagged by the bias detection protocol. A small incident, handled, logged, resolved. No drama, just clarity and accountability in motion. In another part of the branch, Jen delivered her first regional training. No polished slides, no corporate jargon, just her voice. Raw, steady, human. "I used to think neutrality was safety," she began. "Now I know it's silence." Rodriguez stood nearby, arms folded, not overseeing, watching. Proud, quiet, witnessing growth in real time. The Amelia Protocol had grown beyond policy. It had matured into routine, into culture. It worked because the people chose to believe in it, breathe it, live it. The change wasn't enforced. It was embraced. The public noticed. Community leaders returned, not for media stunts, but to move accounts. The local NAACP chapter endorsed the reforms. The Hispanic Chamber rerouted all deposits to this branch. And then, one afternoon, a local business owner entered, hands shaking, eyes wet, carrying a letter from Jackson's office. Loan approved. Other banks had turned her away. "I was ready to give up," she said, voice cracking. "Your bank didn't just approve me. You believed me." Chen smiled gently, sliding the papers across the desk. "No one builds alone," she said, "but trust, that's something we build together." Each account became more than paperwork. It became proof that trust could be restored, rebuilt, honored, one person at a time. Rodriguez nodded from his post at the door, watching her walk out. Proud, again. Gonzalez updated the board. 31% increase in minority-owned accounts, she reported. "That's not outreach, that's real change." Across the city, whispers rose like wind. "They're different now." Rodriguez, once just a security guard, now trained every new hire. He began each session with the same line, "I've seen what happens when respect is delayed." His trainings weren't about compliance, they were about conscience. He shared stories, regret, redirection, responsibility. "Disrespect doesn't always scream," he'd say. "Sometimes it whispers, and we miss it." He didn't preach. He related. He connected. One trainee asked, hesitant, "What if we make the wrong call?" Rodriguez didn't flinch. "Then, own it, fix it, and don't repeat it." That phrase made its way to the training room wall. Own it, fix it, don't repeat it. Not a motto, a vow, a lived promise. Some lessons leave bruises, others leave direction. Webb's apology letter, never acknowledged, never returned, was quietly placed on HR's training desk, labeled for future reference. Jen found it weeks later. She read every line twice. "I followed procedure," Webb had written, but forgot people. Jackson's name appeared just once, without bitterness, only as a turning point. Chen placed the letter into a binder labeled Case Studies, Prevention and Repair. Not to shame, but to remember. "Mistakes leave shadows," she whispered, closing the binder. "But if we don't hide them, they can teach." 6 weeks passed. The marble lobby remained the same, but it felt transformed. Chairs now faced the entrance. Staff stood as one. When Jackson walked in, nothing was announced, but everyone rose, not by order, by respect. He wore the same navy suit, same steady gait, no pretense. The young teller from his first day stepped forward. "Mr. Jackson," she said softly. "Welcome back." He nodded once, didn't smile, but his eyes paused, gentle, grateful. Behind them, Gonzalez leaned toward Chen and whispered. They all stood before he even reached the door. Chen said nothing, just blinked quickly and held her clipboard a little tighter. This wasn't a room of protocol anymore. It was a space of memory, of growth, of quiet redemption. Jackson never needed recognition, because real respect It doesn't ask to be earned, it just arrives. In the press room, lights beamed, cameras blinked red, reporters waited, pens poised, hungry for a quote. But Jackson didn't step to the podium. Instead, he turned and gestured. Chen stood. Her hands shook at first, but her voice did not. "I was part of the mistake," she began. "But I'm also part of the change." Her words didn't seek applause. They offered ownership. She spoke of silence, of choosing safety over truth, of what it cost to nearly stand on the wrong side of someone's story. Jackson stood behind her, not as a shield, but as proof. Proof that redemption matters. "Some lessons," Shin said, "can't be taught from above. They have to be told by the ones who nearly fell and turned back." 6 weeks later, Jackson returned again, quiet, no press. Same vest, same walk. Every employee rose, not out of protocol, out of principle. Chen met him first, not nervous, grounded. Behind her, Gonzalez smiled. She had built something here. Solid, living, breathing. Posters lined the walls. Respect for all. Translated in 3 languages, no fine print, no debate, just truth. At the door, a young teller greeted an older man. His coat was threadbare, shoes worn. She offered water. Then, her time. Jackson paused, watched. Not the numbers, but the gestures, the instincts, the unseen becoming habit. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Change had taken root, and it showed. At the final reform press conference, executives gathered, reporters whispered, but Jackson stayed seated. Chen approached the podium. Her voice no longer wavered. "I stood silent when I should have spoken," she said. "Today I speak for those who didn't get that second chance." The slide showed numbers, complaints down, satisfaction up. But what lingered was her truth. Behind her, Jackson nodded, not proudly, but with quiet relief. A journalist whispered, "Why let her speak for you?" Jackson replied, "Because those who were wrong should carry the message." Silence, then applause. Not loud, just lasting. After the conference, as the room emptied, Chen stood alone for a moment. Jackson walked up, quiet. "You spoke the truth," he said. She nodded, "Because I lived it." They left together, no lights, no cameras. Outside, dusk softened the glass building's reflection. Rodriguez waited by the curb. "Good turnout," he said. "No one left early." Chen smiled. "That's what happens when the story's real." Jackson looked at both of them, then at the building behind. "Let's make sure it stays real." He wasn't talking about slogans. He meant the work. Inside, an elderly man stepped into the lobby. He moved slow, shoes tired, eyes unsure. Before he could ask, a young teller approached. No script, no clipboard. "Can I help you today, sir?" He smiled faintly. "Just a few questions." "No rush," she said gently. "Take your time." She pulled out a chair, offered water. Across the lobby, Chen watched. No cameras, no policy speech. Just a moment done right. Rodriguez stood nearby. He met Chen's eyes. Gave a small nod. Outside, Jackson passed the windows. He didn't stop, but he saw and kept walking. The screen faded to black. One line appeared in soft white text. "Respect doesn't ask who you are.